Hey guys, it's Kevin again here with
Hey, it's Allie.
yes. So as you know, I've been very behind on the what I watched videos. I'm slowly catching up. I don't know when this video will be up, but you guys know me. I like to go in order of things, so this will be up whenever I'm caught up at some point. But that's not what's important here. What's important is why is Allie in this video? Well, this was a video that we were supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
We were on vacation. I said to Allie, hey, we'll be on vacation. I need to get a what I watched in July video done. Let's take advantage of that. And that's exactly what we did. We watched every single July movie to get some of them together, some of them on our own. But we watched all of them together. But we did watch all the ones that I had on the list. And now we're at the point where we're ready to talk about them. And Allie, are you excited for this?
I am. Yeah, we were supposed to do it on our trip, but we got too busy.
Yeah, we got way too busy with stuff. Don't host a game when you're on vacation. You won't get anything fucking done. No, but in all seriousness, I'm very excited to get this video done. There are a lot of movies that we're talking about here, some of which I'm very excited to talk about, some of which I don't really have too much to say. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. You guys know how this works at this point. It's basically like a regular movie review, but it's a more longer version of that. These are the movies that I just didn't really have much to say about in a full review, so I condensed them into this video. I'll say something, Allie will say something, we'll give our grade. I don't want this video to go on for like 15 years, so without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and get started with the first film. All right, so first film we're talking about is Minions: The Rise of Gru, and I'll start off with this one. Look, you guys know I have a very complicated history when it comes to the Minions because the first two Despicable Me movies I like a lot. I think they're funny. I think they're clever. I think they have a lot of heart. I think that the character of Gru is somebody that you can very easily latch onto. But the more that they've gone on, the more I feel like they've just started to wear thin. And the reason I've said it before that I think the Minions worked well in those first two movies is because they use them sparingly. They work as these fun little side characters who are doing their own like funny gags, and they say obnoxious stuff and things like that. Like that's fun to watch. When you try to condense that to like an 80-minute movie, it just really doesn't work at all. I was forced to rewatch the first Minions with a friend of mine, and it was just as bad as I had remembered. So you can imagine my anticipation for this one really wasn't that high at all. But this one honestly wasn't quite as bad. I think there are some things that do elevate it. Right off the bat, the one thing that absolutely makes this one better than the first one is that we actually do have compelling human characters this time around. I feel like the first movie, everything was from the Minions' perspective. It was very hard to care about anything that was going on by like a surface level. At least this time around, we are following a younger Gru. And here's the thing. They easily could have just had him be younger Gru and, kind of see him like get settled into the role and things like that. But what I like about Gru in this movie is you're kind of reminded as to what the charm was with his character. This isn't someone who is like this amazing supervillain yet. That's not where he is yet in his life. He looks up to these supervillains. He sees them as like kind of his heroes in that way, and you kind of do get to see like his humble beginnings in a sort. And I gotta say, Steve Carell really sells it here. He sells it very well as a younger Gru. You do find yourself caring about this character. There's a really nice subplot in there with him and Alan Arkin's character, who is the main villain that he looks up to. Their relationship actually ended up being kind of sweet, and I liked where they ended up going with that story. I thought it was going to go down like this very derivative path where it's like, oh, the person you thought you knew isn't the person you thought you knew, and now he's going to be like the villain. But they actually do some good work with both of those characters, and it kind of, in some moments, does get you to understand why Gru makes the choices that he does in the first movie. And that's something that I did end up really appreciating. And like I said, Alan Arkin, I thought also was very good here. He works very well as like this mentor of sorts. You don't really know where his character's headed at first, but once you do find yourself really liking him. And anytime the movie cut back to that, I enjoyed it quite a bit. The problem is that's not the main plot of this movie. We are still saddled with a bunch of minion gags that just don't really feel like they have that much of a place in this movie. There's a whole diversion in this story. Like, yeah, I understand that we're starting to see them be, you know, loyal to Gru and be these friends to Gru, and oh, they mess up, and we get this whole generic story of Gru like firing them, but obviously he's gonna rehire them because we know he did it in the first movie. So there's no real conflict there. And once we get to that point, the movie kind of like just grinds to a halt. There's this extended sequence of the minions learning how to do like karate from Michelle Yeoh, who is a completely pointless character. I love Michelle Yeoh. She's in my favorite movie of the year, as you guys know. But like, she has no purpose in this movie whatsoever. It's really just here to have this like gag at the end of like the of the movie. It just really did not end up working for me at all. And again, I have to say it, I just don't think the minions are particularly compelling characters. I didn't find myself latching on to really any of them. I didn't really find any of them particularly interesting. I will say the character of the new character Otto that they brought in, I thought was like a little fun addition, but again, he works best in smaller doses. He doesn't work best throughout the entire movie. Like, yeah, I get it. He's like younger and things like that, and he's a bit more naive and all that stuff. But like, there just isn't a lot for him to do. And then you also have this whole villains team in the movie that we're dealing with, and my God, do they waste them? I mean, they do absolutely nothing, and they have a lot of good actors in here. Taraji P. Henson's in here, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Danny Trejo, Lucy Lawless, Dolph Lundgren. The fact that they wrangled up all of these actors and they do almost nothing with them was just very disappointing to me. I didn't feel like they really did anything interesting in this movie. The whole thing they end up doing at the end, it's like just wasted potential. You never really feel the threat of the villains in this movie. So yeah, on one hand, there were things that I did end up liking. There were moments that admittedly made me laugh here and there, but overall, I just found this to be very middle of the road, very much just something that I'll watch and then I'll forget about instantly. It has those good moments in there with Gru and Alan Arkin's character, but when it wasn't focused on them, I just really didn't get much out of this at all. So yeah, that's good animation. Obviously, like the animation's still really good. I actually think the 70s time period worked relatively well in this movie. They actually did more with it than say like the 60s in the first film, and that's something I did appreciate, but overall not really a big fan.
I actually don't remember if I've seen the first one or not. If I have, it was probably just like maybe just part of it, or it's been too long. But I took my sister and her friend to see.
They work for like a super villain. That's all you need to know. They work for some super villain, and it doesn't work out. Like it's
yeah. I took my sister and her friend to see this, and I mean, I did not actually hate it. I mean, obviously, it wasn't the best. It was just very like simple, but like I didn't hate it or anything. It was fun. It was just, and it was kind of comedic. The airplane scene I thought was like pretty funny. That was probably the funniest part in my opinion. It was like definitely the laugh the hardest. But the story was kind of just typical, simple, but it was also very wholesome. Like it was just like a fun little movie. Yeah, like I said, like I watched with my sister and stuff. Just like a fun little movie, just that I take her to, or just like something you watch in like the background or just for fun kind of thing. The animation was great, very creative, very innovative. I really like that. And then I think just overall the movie was just very cute and sweet, just like a very little wholesome kind of film. Obviously there are like a lot of issues, but I still gave this movie a B because like I didn't hate it or anything. I thought it was fun.
Yeah. Also, one more thing to note about this movie. I had by far one of the worst audience experiences watching this
Oh
movie.
yeah, yeah, you told me.
The people in my audience were so fucking obnoxious. There is a scene with the minions. They're singing a song. I'm not gonna say much more than that. But my audience was like singing along, and they were like clapping, and it was terrible. The movie itself is not terrible. I'm giving it a C. It's very middle of the road for me. Not really much
It
else
really
to
was.
say about this one.
But I
But I
still like
swear to
give it a
God,
B.
I
I didn't
swear
rate
to
it
God,
that
Allie.
I didn't rate it that low.
I swear to God, Allie, if I see one more fucking person dressed as a god, dressed dressed to the nines to see fucking Minions: The Rise of Gru, I'm just gonna absolutely lose my shit. I have nothing more to say about that. Stop that trend. I understand it's fun to do, but no, stop. Like it's cool. This movie made money, but like stop, please. I'm begging you, please. All right, so you want to talk about this next one first?
Sure. The next one is The Princess.
Yes.
I was actually really excited going into it, but honestly, like while I was watching it, it like disappointed me. There just wasn't really anything special, and like even the acting was not that great. Besides Joey King, like she was like badass and she was great, and she was like this was probably like one of her stronger roles
Oh yeah.
because and she's also very talented. So and just like this movie just didn't really showcase anything though. Like it just she could have had something so much better, you know? Like the story just was very basic, very boring, didn't have anything happen. Like and like the dialogue was just very cringy and there was no heart and it was just like what? I was so confused watching it. Like there was like nothing happening. Just I mean the cinematography was pretty good. It was cool. But like I don't have a ton to say about this movie, just that it was very forgettable, very just kind of there for me. Like I probably wouldn't rewatch it unless like there was a reason to or if a friend wanted to put it on or something, but it's really just like a background film and like something that we would just watch just like if we were literally like working on something or whatever. But yeah, this was one of the disappointments of the year for me. Sadly, love Joey King. She was phenomenal. She was hands down the best part of it, and I gave it a C minus.
Yeah, I was very let down by this one too. I thought it had a lot of potential going into it. I really like the idea of like this princess that she's not this like damsel in distress. No, she actually fights back against like her
Yeah.
the people that like have kidnapped her. Like I think that's a really fun premise. The
Oh,
problem is the movie throughout the entirety has no idea what it wants to do with it. The action sequences themselves, you know, when Joey King is kicking ass, yeah, it's fun to watch. But after the fourth or fifth time of it happening, it just starts to really grow very tiresome. It's like, does this movie have anything
very
else?
repetitive.
Yeah, it's like, do they really have anything else to offer? I remember when we were watching, like I said to you, I'm like, is there anything else to this movie besides action sequences? And I've seen people compare it to a video game. And honestly, I think that's an apt comparison because a lot of the time it just feels like the movie is just in a rush to get to the next action sequence because story-wise, oh my God, this is a rough one. I mean, even though this movie is trying to do something different, the story is so generic. It's just, oh, her family was captured and this guy is like trying to like inherit the throne and things like that. And he like every guy in this movie like sucks and all this stuff. Like there's never really, and then there's also Olga Kurylenko's character who also sucks. Like there's never really a chance to dive deep into any of these characters, really see, like their motivations. There's a good morsel of a story in there with her and her friend that when they started to dive into that more towards the end, I started to like that. But it also frustrated me because I was like, why didn't we get this from the beginning? Like I really am starting to care about this, but I'm also not. what really ends up holding this movie together and keeps me from absolutely just hating it is Joey King. She's fantastic in this role. She settles into it very nicely. You can see that this film proves that she very much is a star. Like, she definitely can carry a film very well. I think that she did a good job commanding this role. She gives the role like an energy and, you know, sort of like this authentic nature that the film otherwise just doesn't have. Other than that, like, the rest of the acting here just isn't very good. I'm usually a big fan of Dominic Cooper, but like, he's really just overdoing it in this movie to the point where it's really cringy to watch. Olga Kurylenko, I didn't think was very good here. Just the majority of the acting was just not really that great. I know you touched upon play as well. I would definitely agree with you. I think a lot of the dialogue was just really not great at all. Definitely could have used a second draft of sorts. Yeah, I mean, there just isn't really a lot to say about this one. I honestly found it very boring throughout the majority of it. And I'd like, when it started off, I thought that it had quite a bit of potential. It's just the more it went on, the more I just didn't care about this at all. I felt like this was just such just a waste of what could have been, I think, a very interesting concept. But unfortunately, it's just a very run-of-the-mill like fantasy film that has some good action. But here's the thing, I wouldn't even say the action's that great. It's like it's very repetitive. It's very like choppily done. So yeah, I just wasn't a fan of this at all. C- for The Princess. Like I said, there's some good ideas in there, but overall, I really was not a fan of this one. All right, so the next one here, Mr. Malcolm's List, is actually the opposite for me. This is a movie that I didn't care all that much about going into it, but after watching it, I actually found this to be pretty charming. I think the thing that really works with this story is, one, the fact that all of these actors are really just doing a great job. I felt like every single actor in this movie, you could tell, was having a lot of fun with this story. I think Frida Pinto is just really likable in this film. You really gravitate towards Selena. You really like her sort of positive view on things, especially when you contrast that with Julia, who is, you know, she's much more like by the book and things like that. And I thought that their overall like back and forth was really fun to watch. And I thought both of them worked really well together. But then the character of Mr. Malcolm is much different than I expected. This guy is not just like this like douchey sort of, you know, aristocratic type character. He actually has a lot of commitment issues, and that's something the film does get into very well. Like, there's what the film has to say about learning to love, but also accepting the fact that you are able to fall in love with someone. You don't have to worry about, you know, what could happen. You just be acceptive of the fact that you are in love. And I think that that's actually a really good message, and it's something that this movie does do very well. Like I said, I think the heart is definitely, the movie also is very funny. I was laughing quite a bit throughout this, especially whenever Ashley Park's character popped up, the character of Gertie. I was in absolute stitches whenever she appeared. I thought she was just a really fun character to watch in this. So yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton to say about this one other than I just found this to be just a very charming film. I think that it's a very uplifting one. It's the perfect kind of movie where it's like, if you just need something to just like really put a smile on your face, I think Mr. Malcolm's List is the perfect example of that. I'm not usually a huge fan of like period dramas like this, but I feel like this is definitely one of the better ones that we have gotten. I can walk away from this movie and say this actually tried to do something a little bit different. It wasn't a run-of-the-mill story. They actually did a pretty good job of diving into Mr. Malcolm and his sort of insecurities, but then also diving into why Julia feels the way that she does. I thought all of that was just really well done in this movie. Also, Oliver Jackson Cohen is so good here. You love his friendship with Mr. Malcolm in this movie. That's something else that I thought worked really well. Just overall, I really did end up enjoying this one quite a bit. I think the cinematography also is fantastic. It's a very visually stunning film to look at. I thought all the costumes and things like that were really well done. So yeah, I actually got a lot more out of this one than I expected. So B for Mr. Malcolm's List. Like I said, wasn't expecting much, but I actually ended up quite liking this one. But what did you think?
Oh, right. I actually recently just watched this one just because I didn't get to until like a few days ago or so. So yeah, I rented it, and it definitely had a very simplistic story, but it was super. But it was definitely sweet and wholesome, and it's just like a very charming and cute little film about true love and everything, which I like adore that. But overall it was just kind of there. Like it was just kind of just like a simple movie that you just like put on if you need something, like you said, like if you need something to put a smile on your face or just need to watch something happy, or just like put on while you're doing work or whatever. Which I did really like this film. But like the cast did a phenomenal job with their roles and everything. Like I don't think anyone did a bad job.
No.
But yeah, their intake on true love, love that. It was great. It was just so sweet, and
it's a very timeless message, I think.
It was very just very delightful, very pleasant. And the cinematography was very stunning, very creative, and they really like made it look 19th century England. Like it was just like incredible in that sense. And like the score was beautiful, and like it really related to the theme. And this film was just very like heartwarming and just this pure film that you just watch just to like put on a happy face. And overall, I gave this movie a B-. This next one is Hello, Goodbye, and Everything in Between. This one, I actually didn't hate it. It was another very sweet and wholesome film, and like the whole cast just had this like genuine chemistry with each other. Talia Ryder played a very strong performance as Claire, and then like love Jordan Fisher. He's super talented and great. He played a very strong performance as Aiden, and like their connection was just very real, very genuine and authentic, and that was just like incredibly heartwarming. And of course, they were definitely the heart of this film because of that. And I just thought the story, it was like very moving and touching, but it also felt a little rushed at times. I wish they delved deeper into some of the storylines, of course, just because, like, just some things we didn't really get a lot into, like, sadly. But it was still a great film, and it was just the passion was very gratifying, very delightful, and the emotion was very authentic, not forced. Like, overall, I just thought this was a very enjoyable and pure film. I actually really enjoyed it. It's been a while, obviously, since we watched it, but like it was really cute. And besides like a few things here and there, like I really like this film, and it was something special. It was definitely like a real treat, and I gave this one a B.
Yeah, this was another one that I actually liked a lot more than I thought I would. Right off the bat, I think one of the things that really works is the chemistry between these two actors. I mean, Talia Ryder and Jordan Fisher are both really talented. We already know this from other movies, but I felt like they worked a lot better here than I really thought they would. I think that you really do buy into their chemistry, and I think that's something that works really well within this movie is you really do feel like you get to know these two characters. You feel for their relationship. You feel for the situation they're in. You know, these two are in a place where they're both head off to college, and you can see they're kind of in different places within their life. And I think that's something that this film actually does dive deep into very well. You know, you can see that Talia Ryder's character, she doesn't really want to face reality, whereas Jordan Fisher's character does. And you can see that sort of clash between these two throughout the movie. And I thought that's something that was definitely really well done here. You can see that there is definitely this very interesting sort of dynamic that I thought worked really well in this film. It's also just a very charming movie to watch. I thought that there were a lot of just really fun moments. The thing that brings it down for me, and Ali kind of touched upon this, is I think this movie is just a little too short. I've heard a lot of people say this is a very breezy watch, and that's great. But I think, you know, with them having this film being only like an hour or 20 something minutes long, it actually sacrifices a lot of, I think, impactful storytelling.
Yeah, like it could have been at least like an hour 40-ish.
Yeah, because the movie starts off and you get to see how these two first met, and then they montage through the entirety of the year of their relationship. And here's the thing. I'm not asking for them to go super deep into every single thing that happened,
Yeah.
but if they would have, I think, have the first half of this movie be the year of their relationship, then have the second half of this movie be what it is, I think it actually would be a lot more impactful. Because while I felt like I knew these characters, I felt like there were things that I was missing. I felt like the year flew by too quickly for me, to the sense where it felt like we didn't really get to see enough of that year. We didn't get to see enough of these two, and how their relationship really does progress. It quite literally goes from this like meet cute of sorts to them then montaging through an entire year to then, oh, well, now we're going to break up. Like that's what it feels like. And it just feels like there are some significant gaps that are missing within this story. Again, I think what saves it is the film does really take the time to dive into this conflict and what these two characters are going through. It just feels like, had we had the time to really dive into their relationship, I think we would have cared that much more, because that's what was missing for me when it came to this movie. I think they could have done a better job with that, but the charm is there. The heart is definitely there. You feel for these two characters. There's some really fun moments. There is a side plot going on with some friends of theirs that I thought was honestly really funny every time they come back to it. Overall, like, I enjoyed this more than I thought I would. I think it's certainly better than the majority of like rom-coms on Netflix. It definitely has a little bit more to offer. I just wish that they had really taken a bit more time to dive into some of the things that they were getting at, so that way it was that much more effective overall. Still a good movie, still would recommend it. I'd give this one a B-. Definitely a much better movie than I think I was ultimately anticipating. I end up liking this one quite a bit. The Sea Beast was basically everything that I was kind of hoping it would be. I feel like this film is just a really good throwback to like older animated movies from like the 80s or the 90s that were more like geared, that were still for kids but had these more like mature themes in them. And I think that's something that this film does a really good job with. I mean, right off the bat, the animation is just absolutely stunning here. I think the details just on that you can just see from that poster alone. I mean, they just do such a great job of throwing you into this time period. Really just, the world building, all of that is very strong here. And I thought they did a really good job. But then you also have some really good characters that you're following in this movie. Carl Urban as Jacob Holland in particular, I thought was really strong here. He's kind of tasked with this thing that he needs to do. And you can see throughout the movie, it kind of turns into this moral dilemma of sorts from him, where it's like he's kind of taught to believe this way, but when he ends up meeting this younger girl, Maisie, you can kind of see how that kind of starts to come into conflict with what he's previously known. And I thought the way they handled that character was honestly really well done. And then Maisie as well, like, you can understand the care that she has for these sea monsters and the way that she looks at sea monsters overall. It's so different from everybody else who is focusing solely on like, we got to hunt these sea monsters. They're predators. They're gonna take over. Like, they're gonna harm us. She kind of sees the good in them. And I thought that's something that this movie did do a really good job with, but also getting you to care for both of them. I think the movie does a really good job with that as well. I really found myself liking their overall dynamic, and I thought that was some of the best parts of this movie. But the film also is just really incredible in terms of action. There are a lot of incredible action sequences here that are very hard to, that you really just can't take your eyes off of. I thought that they did a really great job with that. And overall, I think this is just a really effective adventure film. I think there's not many like it out there that I think you'll find this year. And I definitely do recommend checking this one out. I feel like this is another film that Netflix just didn't really promote all that well. And it's unfortunate, because I think it's actually like a really strong film for them that I think if they had promoted more, I think would have been a really big hit for the distributor overall. But, we're too busy promoting things like a movie we're going to talk about a little bit later that's not really worth promoting that much. I really enjoyed this one. Really good ending as well. Really like the message that they end up getting at with this. Went in a very different direction than I was expecting, and that's something that I really did enjoy. So B+ for The Sea Beast. I think this is really just everything that you could have hoped for in a movie of this kind.
Oh yeah. honestly, going into it, I didn't even know much about it at all. Like this one, I'd never even heard of until you put it on this list and everything.
Yeah.
But I thought it was like really enjoyable, really great film, and like
Mhm.
the animation was beautiful and stunning, like you said. Loved that so much, and like it was just a very important and heartwarming storyline. Literally, my only issues are just that it had a little bit of a slow start, and a few
Yeah.
and a few characters were a little underused, didn't have much to
Yeah.
do. Hence, like the villains.
Yeah, the villains weren't that great here.
Yeah. They were just kind of like there. Didn't have anything happening. But like this film was definitely something special, and like it was just a really like fun and like wonderful film overall, and it's just something maybe I'll watch it with my sister next time. Maybe I'll play it for her or something. But yeah, it's definitely like a real treat that I would definitely rewatch, and I gave this one an A minus.
Okay, I'm sure you're excited to talk about this next one.
All right, Where the Crawdads Sing.
Yes.
I was actually looking forward to seeing this film, but when I was watching it, actually, it was cute because we watched it in person.
Yes, we did.
We saw it in theater. Um, but sadly, when we were watching it, it just disappointed me.
Yeah.
Like I didn't dislike it or anything, didn't hate it, but it was just like super boring, very dull, and like it just dragged on like a good majority. And like the storyline was just super predictable. Daisy Edgar Jones was definitely the best part of the film because like she was just fantastic, and like most of the time she's always like wonderful, and she just put a ton of heart and passion into her role of Kaya. Taylor John Smith did a great job as Tate, but Harris Dickinson was terrible as Chase
Oh, yeah.
Andrews. I almost called him Matthews. Chase Matthews. It's funny. But yeah, the character of Chase was just super stiff and like very one note. Like he was just very bad. I did not enjoy him at all. Um I would say the score was like really nice and like it was just beautiful. I really love the score. The cinematography was beautiful and stunning, which like those are two of the best parts of this film, I think. And obviously, like the song Carolina from Taylor Swift was just very like incredible, and like it just like gave me very like folklore Evermore vibes. Which love that song. And like I wouldn't say the film was bad. Like it wasn't horrible, but it just had like a ton of mistakes, and it was just very misleading, very tedious. Like I actually just bought the book the other day too, which I'm excited to read that. I need to read it soon because my friend even told me like she preferred the book over the movie as well. But yeah, I didn't hate it, but it's something that I don't know if I'd rewatch it. Yeah, I gave this one a C.
Yeah, this is another one that I thought actually did have quite a bit of potential going into it, but this
Yeah,
just did not work for me at all. Just think the story, the way it's presented, it just doesn't really work in this movie. We kind of
no,
have like two different movies going on here. We have like the flashbacks with us seeing her from like her humble beginnings, like being the marsh girl of sorts, and sort of like this relationship that forms, and then you have this case that's going on, and it just clashes. Like the mystery itself, you're not really that invested in because it's not really relevant in terms of like the flashbacks that we're getting for a while. That story does
yeah,
not even come up until like the third act of this movie. Like nothing that has to do with the case really becomes relevant until like the last like 30 to 40 minutes. So I think what they should have done is just do what they did in the book, where from what I understand, she's not going to court right away. It's kind of like it's this frame story of sorts where they are piecing together things about this case, and then it eventually ties back to like the flashbacks. I just think that the structure was all wrong for this movie. I don't think it really worked at all. I also think there are some very like problematic elements of the story that I just don't really feel about, and I just don't think really works in the grand scheme at all. The ending in particular, I just really didn't like at all. I don't understand what we're really supposed to gather from it. What impact is it really supposed to have on us? I just wasn't really big into the way the movie did end up wrapping up. What really saves it is Daisy Edgar Jones being as good of an actress as she is. I've said it since Normal People. She is a fucking star. She deserves all the roles, and she definitely does kill it in this movie. She gives a lot of heart. She gives a lot of empathy, I think, to Kaya that otherwise would not have been there, and I think she does do a really good job with that. And Taylor John Smith, I actually thought was really good here. I enjoyed him quite a bit in this movie, actually, much better than other stuff I've seen him in. I think this is like easily his best performance, and the relation between Tate and Kaya, you actually do kind of like. I think that they do a good job in pacing that relationship. I cannot say the same for the character of Chase Andrews, who just the second that he shows up, I understand you're not supposed to like this character, but Harris Dickinson is just really overdoing it here to the point where I'm not going to lie, I was laughing at points. It was so over the top, and it not in a good way. It just did not work for me at all with what he was really doing here. I also just think this movie is just way too dragged out. There's a lot of things they spend time on that they just really didn't need to at all. The 2-hour runtime is just not really all that justified here. There are a lot of story elements that feel like they should be important, but they don't. Like, for example, her mother is supposed to be a big part of this story, but that's not really something the movie focuses on as much as it thinks it does. There's like another family that Kaya lives with that we barely focus on. Every time they come back up, I'm like, oh yeah, these guys still exist. They're still in the story. Like, it's just not.
I remember them.
It's just not super well written at all. There's a lot of elements that are just very derivative of these kind of like YA type stories. Yeah, unfortunately, this just didn't really work for me. I do think there is some really good cinematography. There are good moments in this film.
It's a very vibey, ethereal kind of like thing.
I don't know what that means, but anyway.
You've never heard of this? You've never heard of this word?
Vibey girl?
No, ethereal.
What?
No, this. You've never heard of that word?
Ethereal?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'd say it was ethereal in any way, but like I think that
in like some aspects it was.
I mean, in some aspects, yeah, but I just think overall this just wasn't really all that great. It had some moments to it that I enjoyed, but overall, I just found this to be very, very mediocre. So yeah, I'd give this one a C. I didn't hate it or anything. I can understand why somebody would hate this. I'm not quite on that level because I do think there are some redeeming aspects to the film. But the things that it does wrong, my God, did it do wrong. And I just don't think that this story itself just really worked at all. So yeah, C for Where the Crawdads Sing. Was honestly very disappointed with this one. Probably one of the biggest disappointments of the year for me so far. My God, Paws of Fury. Look, this was one that I was just really dreading from the marketing. I thought it just looked really obnoxious, really stupid. And it's basically what I expected. I will say that it's not as bad as I thought. The one thing I can give this movie is the voice acting is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I think Michael Cera does give an okay performance here. He sells you well on this character, and I think that does overall work in this movie. Samuel Jackson didn't seem as bored as I thought that he was going to be. from the marketing, it just seemed like he was not really into this at all. But I thought that he actually did do an okay job here. Mel Brooks, I thought, was actually kind of a fun standout. We don't know why Mel Brooks is in this movie out of everything, but like I thought he was pretty good here. That the animation also is not the worst thing ever. There are actually some pretty good shots in this movie that I did end up liking. I think there's some things that are animated pretty well. That's kind of it. I'm not gonna lie. I really hated a lot of things about this movie, starting off with the fact that this whole film is supposed to be this like weird like remake of Blazing Saddles, and like what a weird choice. Like, first of all, I think that Blazing Saddles is the kind of movie that works because of like how raunchy and adult it is. So you take all of that out, and I just don't really think it works anymore. But I also don't understand how that story translates to what's going on here. Like, this whole thing about, oh, we hate dogs, no dogs allowed. They never really explain why that is, what's really, you know, the point of all of that. It just doesn't really work very well. A lot of the characters here are just really underwritten. Our main character is really not easy to get attached to because he just doesn't really have a lot going on with him. Yeah, he's supposed to be this like misunderstood dog who settles into this role, but to be honest, a lot of the time I just didn't really find myself latching onto his character. I didn't really find him to be super compelling. I will say the villain of this movie is so obvious from the start. Like, there is nothing shocking about where they end up going with that. I literally predicted from the beginning, like, this is probably the villain, and I was very much right about that. There was one direction they went in that I actually did kind of like with the character. They did something a little bit different with one character that I wasn't quite expecting, and that's something that I did enjoy. What I didn't like was the comedy in this movie. The comedy is horrible in this film. There's some really terrible jokes in here. If you like punny humor, like for example, a bunch of these like cats who are dressed like ninjas come out, and Samuel Jackson goes, "Oh my God, ninjas with attitude!" Like stuff like that. If that amuses you, enjoy, because there's a ton of stuff like that in this movie. There was another joke that really pissed me off. I forgot exactly what was said, but there's just a lot of really terrible jokes in this movie. There's also tons, like an overabundance of breaking the fourth wall here, and I just didn't understand why they were doing it constantly. It just felt so forced. There's so many parts of this movie where they're like, oh, well, the movie's only 90 minutes long, so we got to wrap this up. And I was like, what is the joke here? Are you trying to like joke that, oh, because things are so rushed, like we get it? Like, that doesn't make it better. That just makes it a like stupidly self-aware. Like, why did you make the movie that it's like you only made the movie that short to include that joke? I don't know, stuff like that just really pissed me off. There's all these like there's terrible references. There's one scene involving a reference to West Side Story, and I have not grown that hard at anything in quite a bit. It just, I was like, what the hell are we doing here? There's so many things that are rushed in this movie. Every beat is so forced here. The third act of this film just goes on forever. There's a point where you think the movie's over, and then it starts up again. Just, oh my God, I couldn't stand this one. Look, like I said, there's some good performances in here. There's some fun moments, I guess, but there is a clever idea involving a telephone that I think is admittedly kind of clever what they did with it. But other than that, like I just really couldn't stand this at all. It wasn't necessarily obnoxious. I just thought it was brutally unfunny. Like, the comedy just really fell flat here. Did not work for me in any combination whatsoever. Some good animation, an okay message, I guess, but overall, it's just one of those movies where I'm like, why? Why did this exist? Like, what was the point of this? Why did we think a children's version of Blazing Saddles, but doing it as like a samurai film was like a fun idea? I just don't really understand what anybody was going for here. It's such a puzzling movie all around. So yeah, D+ for Paws of Fury. It wasn't as bad as I had feared, but it's still pretty fucking bad. Allie, go ahead.
All right. This is another one I saw with my sister and her friend Annika a couple days before our trip. And yeah, it was interesting to say the least. I mean, I did think it was fun, but it had like a lot of mistakes and like the jokes were really bad and inconsistent. I mean, there was a few comedic moments here and there. I like the animation. It was innovative. It was good, very creative. But like I don't have a ton to say about this one. Basically a lot of just like kind of echoing you that it just wasn't that great, wasn't very funny. Like some okay characters, but like some people just like why are they there, or they didn't want to be there kind of thing. And then overall this is just like basically a background type of movie. I probably wouldn't rewatch this one unless like I needed something that I've seen before and it was just like to work on something, then just to kind of like have in the background that I don't really care about. But other than that, like, yeah, I just didn't really care much about this film. And I gave it a C because I didn't like rate it that low. I didn't hate it, but I don't love it either.
Oh, the only other thing I'll say about this one is there are so many characters in this that they have like no idea what to do with. Like Gabriel Iglesias is an example of that. Michelle Yeoh. There's this character. Yeah. There's this younger character that I guess is supposed to serve a bigger purpose. There is something that happens with this character, and I was like, what? Like it didn't feel earned in the slightest. They're just bad movie. Bad movie. Let's move on.
All right, Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris. This is like the last film we got to watch together.
Well, technically, we didn't finish it.
Well, started together during our trip. But I actually really enjoyed this one. It was just like incredibly wholesome, very sweet, and the story was very simplistic just because it didn't have a lot going on. It was mostly just about like this woman wanting to go to Paris and like live out a dream kind of thing. But it was just very sweet. Just a very like happy kind of film. Like another one you just watch when you need to put a smile on your face or just put you in a good mood kind of thing. And the acting was great. Leslie Manville was incredible. She had a very strong performance. And like the passion and the heart were genuine, very authentic in this movie. And like the cinematography was stunning. I loved it. And like overall, I think this film is something special. It was just very cute. And like just a heartwarming little film. And just very pure and just brightens up a hard day. And just anytime you need like something like this, just put on this movie. It was very straightforward, very easy, but I definitely enjoyed it. And I don't have too much to say either, but I really like this movie and I gave it a B.
Yeah, I don't really have a ton to say about this one either, to be honest. I think sweet is a very good way to describe it. It's a very simplistic story. She has a goal in mind. She wants this dress. She wants to go to Paris to obtain it. And you kind of see her like going through like the trials and tribulations of getting that dress, but also like forming other relationships along the way. And it's a fun movie in that way. I think Leslie Manville is just a very likable actress. She's somebody that's very easy to latch onto. I think that she does a really good job. But I gotta say, Isabelle Huppert is also fantastic here. She is an actress where every time she pops up, I think she's a big standout, and she does a really good job in this film. She's this very like kind of shrill, very uptight sort of fashion agent, and you can see that she is someone that has a very specific way of looking at things, and the way that she sort of starts to starts to get changed up by Mrs. Harris's arrival, I thought was really well done. I enjoyed her character a lot. I thought she was definitely a really big standout. Jason Isaacs is very good here, I think, for what he has too, although I do think his character was a little bit underwritten. The only thing that brings this movie down for me is because I think it's a little too long. I will be honest, there were some moments that
I kind of agree with that. Like, it could have been shorter.
Yeah, there were definitely moments that I think really did kind of drag on. There's not a ton going on, and it's not necessarily a movie I was bored during, but there were some scenes where I just felt it was a little bit too
like
slow
maybe
at points.
Hour and a half would have been good.
Yeah,
maybe
I think hour and a half would have probably been fine for this. But overall, I think it's a fun watch. It's not really anything that I'd be like, you got to go see this right now. It's such an amazing film, but it's a very like positive, very, I think, easy to like movie that just has a very certain spirit that I think is very hard to resist. And so overall, yeah, I did end up really enjoying this one. So I'd give this one a B-. I don't really have a ton to say. Persuasion, I was very let down by, I will be honest with you. I went into this one hoping that it could be a lot of fun, but I honestly just found it kind of boring. Like, it's not even, because here's the thing. I don't have the passion for Jane Austen that some do. I know there's a lot of people who have like decreed this movie and said all this stuff about how it's inaccurate to the source material. I have no idea if it is or not, because that's not something that I have any real knowledge of. So I'm just judging it like as a film on its own. And on its own, I just found it really boring. It didn't really do much of anything for me. Dakota Johnson is obviously really good. She's a great actress. She elevates the material, but the story in this film, I just found very snoozeworthy. It takes a while for really anything to happen in this movie. There's a lot of actors here that are just kind of wasted. Like Henry Golding has really nothing to do in this movie, and I don't think that really worked. There's also a lot of people pointing this out. There's a lot of anachronistic elements in this movie, a lot of like modernization, like breaking the fourth wall and things like that. And it just doesn't really work. It feels very jarring, and it feels like the movie's kind of like in conflict with itself, because it's trying to be like super sweet and authentic, but it's also trying to be like really witty, really like, you know, kind of very self-aware. And it's just, the two tones just do not work in this film. The comedy didn't really work for me either. I wouldn't say I hated it, but I really just didn't like it at all. So C- for this one. Good moments for sure, but not really anything that special.
All right. Yeah, this is another one I don't have a lot to say either. Like, I went into it not knowing too much about it at all. But I just thought it was extremely dull, very boring, and this is definitely the definition of a background movie. You'd literally just put it on if you're like bored. And I mean, Dakota Johnson is fantastic. She was definitely the best part of it, hands down. Incredible actress. The acting was good. The cinematography was beautiful, which was I mean, that was actually like something that was top tier about it, I guess. Well, sort of. And like it had good moments, but like it was just a snooze fest throughout the majority of this film. I don't rate it that low. I gave my rating or grade a C for this one. Don't Make Me Go. Another movie I didn't really know much about going into it. I didn't hate it or anything, but it was super generic, very typical. Like the story was just like, yeah, super generic, very like basic and stuff. I didn't dislike it. It definitely had an emotional story, and it was heart-wrenching because I did actually get a little teary-eyed during one of the scenes close to the end. It was like the scene where he was like chasing after her when they were like in the car. That was like a scene that actually made me a little teary-eyed. The father-daughter relationship between Max and Molly was definitely the heart of the film. They did a good job overall, like performance-wise. But just like this, yeah, the twist definitely ruined this for me. Like what? But yeah, the twist basically like talked about this whole different storyline that was not even brought up. It was because like I was just very confused. The acting was good though. Basically the father-daughter relationship was definitely the part that saved it for me. They did a good job. But like overall, this film was very background type of movie as well. Didn't hate it. I actually gave this one a C+.
This one really let me down, I gotta say. Right off the bat, like, I've heard people say, oh, the first 2 acts of this movie are a lot of fun. And I didn't really get that vibe. I found it to be honestly fairly generic. Like, yeah, John Cho and Mia Isaac are good in their roles. They definitely do work well together. But this is just a story that I've seen before with this father. He has a few months left to live and he wants to live it out with his daughter, but he's not going to tell her about it. Like, yeah, that's a fine premise, but the movie doesn't really do like a ton with it for a while. It's kind of just like this fun little road trip adventure, and it definitely does have its moments, but then the movie starts to kind of peel back the layers of these 2 characters a bit. And there's a really good moment involving them in a car and him kind of like talking about, you know, worries of his. And I thought this is a really good scene. Now I'm really starting to like this movie. And then this twist happens. And without spoiling anything, the way the twist goes in this movie, it just upends the entirety of the film. Like, after watching the movie, and knowing the twist, you just can't look at the film the same way. It is completely out of left field. It is honestly laughable the way that they try to go about it, the way that they thought that it was even somewhat effective. It just is one of the most emotionally manipulative tactics in a film that I've seen in a very long time. It very much feels like it's just here to get you to cry. It's just here to make you to give you that tearjerker moment. And it just runs so hollow for me because there just wasn't anything prior to that they developed well in the movie regarding this specific plot element. It just didn't really work very much at all. And the way the movie ended, it just really left me feeling cold. Like, the way this wrapped up, I was just like, I got absolutely nothing out of that. Like, this was just such wasted potential. I think this really could have been something special. I think if they really would have put more time into thinking through some of the decisions, I really do think this could have worked. But with the way the movie ends, absolutely not. I don't like that at all. I don't like anything involving the twist in this movie. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it was well thought out. It really
feels it wasn't at all.
It honestly kind of feels like a slap in the face to anyone that is like watching this movie. It's honestly one of the most baffling twists I've seen in a film of this kind in a very long time. I feel like when, you know, you look at like lists of like the most like bizarre twists of all time, this is definitely one that will be in there for sure. Yeah, I mean, I didn't hate this. Like I said, it has some good moments in there. John Cho is a fantastic actor, but we already knew that. And Mia Isaac, I think, really does rise as this very as definitely someone to watch out for. I think she's definitely someone that people are going to be talking about after watching this movie. But to be honest, it's very hard to look at this film and not just immediately think about the terrible ending and just how sour of a taste it makes you, you know, it makes you feel after watching. So yeah, this one just, it did not work for me at all. C for Don't Make Me Go certainly has potential, but it did not in the slightest.
Like, it wasn't terrible. It's just like the twist was like, what are you trying to say here?
Yeah, it just didn't work. Oh my god, this one. Look, One Up is not a movie I've heard a lot of people really talking about, and for good fucking reason. It's a really stupid movie. This is one of those movies where it feels like it was written by people who don't understand the target demographic. It's very obvious like what the whole message is here. Like, you have all these women and they're constantly being like told that they can't do what others can do. It has to do with like, you know, gamers and things like that. And it's just really annoying to watch. There's some good actors in here, like Paris Burlek and Hari Neff, I thought worked well, like as friends, but the dialogue that they're saying, I couldn't stand at all in this one. The villains are so fucking cartoony, and it's like one of those movies where like you can very obviously tell this is not written by a woman. Like, yes, it's a woman-led movie, but you can tell it's not written by a woman. Like, it's one of those kind of movies where it feels like the dialogue, it just isn't very authentic. It's not presented in a manner that feels realistic. It's just really badly done. Very boring as well. I will say Ruby Rose did not grind my gears as much as she usually does. You guys know I can't stand her as an actress, but like I didn't hate her in this. I thought that she had some potential as a character. They didn't really do enough with her, I felt like. But yeah, this is just a really stupid comedy. I don't really have much else to say. To be honest, I've forgotten about a good majority of it since we watched it. But yeah, this one's bad. I do not recommend it at all.
Yeah,
I give it a D plus.
yeah, I don't have a lot to say about this one either. I just thought it was pretty bad, and the dialogue was very cringy, very unsettling. And the storyline was just super basic. Like there was like nothing really to it. Like the only thing that saved it for me was like the acting between like the two leads and their chemistry, because that was actually pretty good.
Yeah, that's
but
really it.
Overall, it's just the definition of a background film. And like you literally would only put it on if you were just not even paying attention. But yeah, I give it a D plus too. Hey, Love Accidentally. We actually just watched this one pretty recently.
We did.
I actually did not hate it. I mean, it was definitely basic and generic, just a very typical like Hallmark movie, but I thought it was actually pretty cute, pretty wholesome. Like I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would. Brenda Song and Aaron O'Connell were definitely the heart of the film, and I like their chemistry. They actually have like a very genuine and sweet chemistry. I like that. Like it was just very cute. Like it was just like a pure thing, and like I love Brenda Song. I was excited when I first heard that she was gonna be in it. And so yeah, the acting was great. Like I thought everyone just did a good job. But I definitely think it still is a background type of movie. But I actually like this one. Like I'd probably watch it like if I don't know, it'd be like one of those Hallmark drinking game movies I do with Emily. But yeah, it's just this one I actually thought was a cute one. It was definitely just very simple, but it was very sweet. And I gave this one a B minus.
Yeah, that's great. I right off the bat, I can say I am not at all like this is not the kind of movie that I normally indulge in. This is the kind of film that I feel like I would be forced to watch if I was either by you or by like friends or something like that. I really just didn't like this at all. I didn't hate it. There definitely are some aspects that I thought were okay. Like Brenda Song is good for what she has. Aaron O'Connell, to be honest with you, just feels like every other like guy in a Hallmark movie, because that's really what this feels like. This feels like a rejected like Hallmark movie. This is the first like Amazon Freevee movie. That's a thing now. It used to be IMDb TV, and now it's Freevee, and this does not really inspire confidence, I think, for them as a streaming service. Like, if this is what they're going to do moving forward, I don't see them lasting very long at all, because it feels like they're just putting on, like, what were going to be Hallmark movies, and Hallmark looked at it, and even they were like, we don't need to do this. This is too generic, and it got thrown onto Freevee, and that's very much what this feels like. Look, I feel like what sums up just how middle of the road this movie is the majority of this film involves these two characters who can't stand each other, because that cliche has never been done before. Brenda Song gets broken up with. She's like texting someone, realizes she's texting the wrong person, and literally the majority of this movie is them talking into a phone and texting each other. That's where most of the meat of the story comes from. And it's like that right there tells you like this probably isn't very good. And no, it's not. And honestly, like Brenda Song's good in this movie, but I'm gonna say what a lot of people have. She's kind of underused in this movie. Like, if anything, Aaron O'Connell, I feel like, had a lot more screen time. He had a lot more going on. She's just kind of like the girl who's broken up with, and she's just annoyed, but yet she starts to like this guy. I felt like it just didn't really utilize her talents all that well. Like, Brenda Song's a very good actress, and I don't know what's been going on with her lately. Like, between this and fucking Secret Hideaway a couple years ago, I just have not been impressed by the projects that she's been taking on. I hope she's able to find work that better utilize their talent, because this honestly did not do it for me at all. The chemistry, I guess, was kind of there, but like not really. It just kind of felt like generic Hallmark movie chemistry. The comedy really didn't work at all. Yeah, this did not really work for me. This is not the kind of movie that I usually do enjoy. I didn't hate it, I will say that. Like, I was expecting to like really fucking despise this thing, but I never really got there because honestly, it's just pretty harmless. Like, there isn't really a lot about this to like really piss me off. I think it's also because like we just got done watching another movie, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that is way fucking worse than this. But yeah, this wasn't very good. I didn't enjoy it very much. It's not the kind of movie that I usually watch. I know there's a target audience out there for movies like this. I'm very much not one of them. Yeah, C for Love Accidentally. This is very, very middle of the road for me. I didn't hate it, but I didn't really like it that much either. So The Gray Man, this is one that I actually was planning to do like an individual review for initially. I was actually really looking forward to this one. It had a really big budget behind it. You had Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans and Ana de Armas and Billy Bob Thornton and all these really great actors. And I felt like this was going to kind of give us a better idea of what the Russo brothers can do when they have that bigger budget and they're not making a Marvel movie. And unfortunately, it's just another really mediocre Netflix movie. And I hate to say that, but like that's really all this kind of amounted to for me. Now, don't get me wrong, there were things I did enjoy. Ryan Gosling is obviously very good here. He's one of the best actors working today. He does, he does what he does well. He portrays the like stoicism of this character well. But he also had a little bit more of a character to him than I was expecting. There's a really good subplot with him and Julia Butters' character. And every time we cut back to it, that's when I was invested in this movie. When they were focusing on that plot line, I'm like, I like this. This is something that I can get behind. You understand the position he's put into, the relationship that they form feels very genuine, but literally everything else going on, I just simply did not care about. And I hate to say it because I love this actor, but Chris Evans is honestly really miscast in this movie. I just don't think he really works in the role that they were going for. He's supposed to be like this really cocky, like very sadistic type character, and at times it came across as laughable to me. I never found this character intimidating. I never found this character really like menacing in any way, and it really is like surprising because Chris Evans has played a villain very well before. He did such an excellent job in Knives Out, but I feel like this time around his talents just weren't fully utilized, and I just wasn't really a big fan of what he was doing in this movie. I'm usually a big fan of him as an actor, but I just don't think he really worked here. A lot of other actors here, they just don't really have a lot to do. Like Regé John Page is just playing like this very like shady guy who you don't trust the entire time. Billy Bob Thornton doesn't really have a ton to do here either. Ana de Armas is good for what she has, but she really doesn't have much to do as a character. And the action sequences, let's talk about them. Some of them, I think, work really well. There's a really good action sequence on a plane. The whole thing's on YouTube if you want to watch it. It's really well done. It's very intense. There's some really good like hand-to-hand combat, but there is a big over-reliance on action in this movie. It felt more like Netflix gave the budget to this movie and basically said, go wild, do whatever you want. And because of that, we have like action scenes that felt like every 10 minutes. And that would be fine if the story was even somewhat investing, but it's really just kind of not. I just wasn't really into a lot of what was going on here. I felt like they could have done a better job in giving us a reason to really care about what was going on. I feel like Netflix's big problem, at least for me right now, is they are putting all of this money into projects that really just don't deserve it. And they also need to recognize that like, not every person needs to get full creative control of every single project. Sometimes you need that extra writer. Sometimes you need that extra director to kind of oversee things. And I feel like that's what worked. I feel like that's what helped the Russo brothers with Endgame, is that they had Kevin Feige being like, yeah, don't do that. That's a little too much. And I feel like that's the problem when it comes to this movie. It's a little too frenetic. It's a little too, all over the place. It feels very style over substance at some points. And I feel like that is what is hurting Netflix right now, is they are pumping all of this money into projects that they don't really deserve it, and honestly don't really do much with the budget. And because of that, we keep getting very mediocre content as a result. So yeah, I wasn't really a big fan of this film at all. I didn't hate it or anything, but I really was pulling for this one. I was hoping that this could be one of those Netflix movies that is one of their bigger budget ones that actually turns out to be pretty good. But unfortunately, I left it and I just kind of felt a resounding meh throughout the entire thing. So yeah, very split down the middle on this one. I'd give it a C. I didn't hate it. Like, I wouldn't say my time was completely wasted watching it, but it could have been so much better.
Yeah, I went into it. I didn't know a ton about it, but yeah, honestly, like when I was watching, it was just quite disappointing. I didn't dislike it, but I just thought it was like really dull. Like the acting was decent, especially a strong performance from Ryan Gosling because he was like definitely the best part of it, and he's
Right.
incredible. Like usually, he's incredible.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah, he's not
Um,
usually bad.
no, not at all. But Chris Evans, like, I love him, but this was definitely one of his weakest roles. He was just like, I wouldn't say he was miscast. I would just say it just wasn't like really the role for him.
Yeah.
Um, and there was just, I think like there was way too much action. Like just sometimes it wasn't needed at times. Like obviously I love action films, but like there, just in this, it just wasn't always needed.
Yeah, it felt like it was
Um,
overcompensating a lot of the time,
yeah,
like the lack of story.
yeah, agreed. And it definitely had its moments. It's just this movie, it just wasn't that great. It's another one that could just be another background movie or just something like that. But yeah, I didn't dislike it, but it was just kind of like a downer. I gave this one a C. Anything's possible. I actually like this one. It was very sweet and very wholesome, and like the storyline and the message were like very important because like it touched on crucial topics and just
Yeah,
like just in, like really important message and everything.
yeah,
And the relationship between, was it
yeah.
Call and Kelsa was just very endearing and pure. Like they had just like this really sweet chemistry, and they were just hands down the heart of this film. And overall, I found this film very moving, very touching, just in so many ways, like based on the story and all that.
Actually, it was Hall, because
Oh,
he keeps that's like one of the running jokes in the movie. He keeps
yeah,
like
yeah,
how to pronounce his name.
yeah. I remember that now. The acting was good. Yeah, my only issue really was just that a few characters were a little underused, didn't have much of a story. Like her friends and some other people, his
Yeah.
friends. But overall, this film actually surprised me. It really impressed me. Like I didn't really know much about it, like going
Mhm.
in, just like based on stuff, like just seeing it advertised on Prime. But yeah, I actually like this one, and I gave this one a B plus.
Yeah, I actually like this a lot more than I thought I was going to. I think right off the bat, the thing that really works with this movie is just how much you like both of the leads. I think both of the
Yeah,
performances are so
yeah.
good here. I haven't seen either of them before, but I guarantee we're going to see more of them after this movie. Both Eva Rain and Ab Ajubkar Ali. I might be pronouncing that name wrong. I apologize if I am. As Hall, I thought their chemistry was just irresistible in this movie. You really latch onto the both of them. They do, I think, a pretty good job of getting you to care about both of them as characters. Obviously, Kelsa, she's going through a lot because of she has this whole podcast of her kind of documenting her like trans experience, but also
Mhm.
like kind of like dating and things like that. And that's
Yeah,
one of I think the best parts of the movie is just kind of seeing like her like inner thoughts and like what
yeah,
she
I love that.
yeah, like what, like her day-to-day lives and things like that. I think that's definitely one of the highlights of the movie. But again, I think
Yes.
Rain as an actress is just so good in this movie. She's so dynamic. She's
Oh yeah.
someone that you just really love watching, and I think she does
So good.
a really good job here. And then Hall is kind of going through his own struggles where, you know, he's trying to get into this school. He's got a family that is kind of tough on him and things like that. So you find yourself invested in both of these characters, and as a result, you really can get behind their overall romance within the movie. And I think that's what works really well. Just I think the spirit and the heart, especially that this film has, is just, it's impossible to resist. And I think that's something that works
Very
really well within
endearing.
this movie. It's also very funny. There were a lot of moments in this
Yeah.
film where I was laughing. I thought that they did a
Very
really good
comedic.
job with it. And like you said, they touch on important topics, but they also don't make the entire movie about those topics. Like, yes,
No.
obviously there are things that come up involving trans issues and what, you know, trans women go through on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis, but that's not the entire focus of this movie. This movie really wants to focus on Kelsa learning to find love and being
Yeah.
able to find somebody that accepts her for who she is. And it's just a really sweet, like, positive story in that way. You know, I
Mhm.
can imagine you know, people within the trans community, this will probably be a very positive experience for them. And I think it's really great that there's a, you know, romantic comedy out there that's like this. I think it does what it does really well. And her mother as well. I also really liked what they did with Kelsa's mom within the film.
Same.
There's a lot of directions they could have gone with that character, but I really like where they end up going with her. You know, you think they're going to go down maybe a cliche path, but they really do a great job of showing this mom that unconditionally is supporting her daughter, even if she isn't fully understanding everything that's going on. She is doing what she can to try to love her throughout this entire thing. And I think that also
Mhm.
is just a really nice, like, positive relationship. And I thought that was portrayed very well. Really, the only thing I think that brings this movie down is I think there are some aspects to it that I felt were kind of rushed.
Yeah,
The
that's true.
friends that both the characters have are pretty underwritten. There's really not a
Yeah.
lot to them. And I think they could have done um, a better job with that, especially because there's something that comes up in the third act and it just doesn't feel quite as effective because you're not super attached to, like, her friends in this
Yeah.
movie. They do a good job of presenting her group of friends as, like, a real group of friends that, like, you could definitely, like, see within high school. But I just didn't really feel like I was all that attached to them as characters. Like, I really cared more because of how it affects Kelsa. I didn't
Yeah.
really care as much about how it affects them, like, on an individual level. I didn't care as much about that. But overall, I just really enjoyed this one a lot. I found it very charming. I thought it was a very easy romantic comedy to sit through. And Billy
Yeah.
Porter, I think, does do a good job directing this. He has a real spirit. I think he definitely does have a style of sorts. I will say that I don't think he does anything amazing in terms of his directing. I think he still needs to find, like, his style a little bit, but you can definitely see the passion that he had within this movie. You can see why he wanted to make this film. And if he is, you know, him dipping his foot in, like, him dipping his toe into the other side of you know, of films and directing, I'm definitely here for it. And I think this is a good one to start out with. So overall, yeah, I like this one actually quite a bit. I did in fact give this one a B. I think that it's just really sweet. I think that both of the characters are really well written, and overall, I've had a
Oh,
really
yeah.
good time with this one. DC League of Super Pets. Look, I was dreading this for a long time. I really just despised the marketing. It looked like a very obnoxious movie. Seeing it though, honestly, it's not that bad. Now, look, I don't think that this is like a great movie or anything. I think there actually are a lot of things that bring it down, but I would call this film a mixed bag, I think is the best way to describe it. I think the one thing that did impress me with this movie is the voice cast. I thought the voice cast gave considerably more energy to this film than I expected. I expected, like, Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart to kind of just, like, go through the motions here, but both of them, I think, do a good job in portraying these characters. And I think they bring personality to them that otherwise wouldn't be there. Dwayne Johnson, you know, he's one of the most charismatic actors, not he's one of the most likable actors, I think, within Hollywood, and
Yeah.
I think he does a good job as Crypto. You do find yourself latching onto Crypto, even when he is being a bit selfish. Like, I think he does a good job in making that character really work. Kevin Hart, I think, is very good here as well, and you do end up appreciating their bond within the film. I think that does work pretty well here. I think all the actors are really good. John Krasinski is pretty good as Superman here. Natasha Lyonne, for me, was the comedic standout in this film. It was so funny whenever she popped up. She plays this character who is this turtle of sorts, and this turtle has a very raunchy sense of humor, and there were a lot of jokes with her that just I really wasn't expecting. And anytime I laughed within the movie, it was something that character said. I thought that her jokes worked really well. I love Natasha Lyonne. She's a great actress, and she really does kill it in this movie. Kate McKinnon was a lot better here than I expected her to be. She actually is very convincing as Lulu. You understand her motivation. You understand why she's doing what she's doing, and it felt like McKinnon just put a lot more effort in than I was expecting, and that's something else that I really did appreciate. Also, I thought the story was actually a little bit better here than I was expecting. They do a pretty good job of diving into the friendship of Crypto and Superman, and you can understand the bond that those two really do have, and kind of like why this is such a big deal when suddenly Lois Lane starts to enter the picture. I thought they did a good job with that, but also doing a good job of showing a lot of, what these characters have gone through, what's gotten them to this point. I thought they did a really good job of that, particularly when it came to the character of Ace. They do this really actually emotional flashback with him, and it honestly kind of got to me. I thought they did a really good job in kind of showing, kind of showing what someone in the animal shelter has gone through. And I thought that his character in particular was one that I did find myself quite latching onto. The animation is also very good here. It's very fluid. It's really colorful. They do a really good job with a lot of the action scenes in this movie. I definitely was impressed by what they ended up doing there. I think that there are definitely some really thrilling moments. What really brings it down for me, unfortunately, is the comedy. I already mentioned that there was some comedy that did work quite well, but then there's some stuff that is just very much geared towards kids, and I didn't think was particularly funny. I think that the film, it does sometimes strike that balance, but I don't think it struck that balance as much as it really could have. I think that a lot of the comedy just I found falling very flat, and I wasn't laughing at the points where I felt like I was supposed to be. There were a lot of jokes where I was just kind of like, I don't really know what the point of this is, and things like that. And also in regards to the writing, like I said, the writing was better than I expected, but there definitely were some things I think they could have touched upon better. Like, for example, as much as I do think they do a good job with latching you onto the friendship between Superman and Crypto, I think they should have taken a little bit more time before Lois Lane enters the picture. And also a lot of the characters that are within the super pets that end up forming, I just didn't think were particularly memorable. There just wasn't a lot to them that I really found myself like really latching onto. There's some characters that work and some that I didn't think really worked all that well. I thought there were honestly too many of them at points, and I think that they could have done a better job in really getting you to latch onto each of them rather than just like a few of them. But I will say, like, if this is going to be like a franchise moving forward or anything like that, I'm not necessarily against it. I think this could definitely work. I think that the fact that I can sit here and say DC League of Super Pets is not the worst thing ever, I think is honestly an accomplishment. I wouldn't say I necessarily liked this movie, but it definitely was a little bit better than I was expecting. It had more substance to it than I was expecting. So yeah, overall, this one was a little bit better than I thought. Like I said, I think it's like the definition of a mixed bag. C+ for League of Super Pets. It's not nearly the train wreck that I was expecting. I don't think it's a total home run, but it does do some things better than I ultimately thought it would.
Yeah, this one actually surprised me. Obviously I didn't love it, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
And like the voice cast was stacked and like just like such a great cast all around.
Oh yeah.
The animation was creative, very original. was just a very innovative and creative film. And like you said, very colorful. I echo you on that. And this movie had a lot of heart, and it was just made a wholesome. It was just a fun and super sweet kind of film, but it was highly comedic. But some of the jokes were a little obnoxious and dumb at times. But overall, like, some of the jokes were great, some were funny. And this film is definitely like one to remember, honestly. Like, and also we saw it in theater together on our trip.
Yes, we did.
I don't have a ton to say about this one, but it was fun. Just like a very like it's definitely like a movie I probably would have also taken my sister because I've taken her to a lot of like animated movies recently.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a cute little film, and I also gave it a C plus. Vengeance, another movie we actually saw in theater on our trip.
Yes, we did.
And I don't have a huge thing to say about it, but I really loved this film, honestly. I really enjoyed watching it. It was just very intriguing, very interesting, and also had some comedy in it too. It was pretty comedic. The acting was good, very well done, and just like it was such a good cast too, honestly. Like they did such a great job. And um the only like issue I had was that it was a little predictable and a little too expected with some of the story. But I did actually really like it. It was just like I don't know, I just thought it was just very creative, and I just thought it was like a fun one, really. Like I enjoyed it even more than I thought I would. And I kind of want to rewatch it.
You can, because now it's on VOD.
Oh, good. Yay.
Yeah.
And it's definitely just like an overlooked kind of movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't have a ton to say about it, but I also, I did really like this one, and I give it a B plus.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. I was actually very excited for it going into it. And I think what really works well about this film is, one, I think BJ Novak's directing is very good here. It's pretty clear that he had an idea of what he really wanted to do. Yes, you're going into this movie and there is this mystery of sorts that you're trying to solve. You're trying to uncover, what really happened to this girl that's been murdered, and her connection to BJ Novak's character. But what I also really like about this film is it's also kind of this satire of podcasters, and not just podcasters, but also like why people decide to podcast. Is it ethical to make a podcast about someone, especially when, as we get further into the film, we start to realize that BJ Novak's character doesn't really have much of a connection to this girl. He's very much trying to make it sound a lot bigger than it was, in a way to kind of get further into this story, so he can kind of like unravel these details a little bit more. And I thought it was very interesting the way they decided to go about it when it came to this character, because there are a lot of points where you're like, I don't really know if I like this guy all that much. I don't really know if I like the way he's going about it. And I thought that's something that Novak did a really good job with. This is a character who you're very conflicted on, what he's doing. If this is a good thing to do morally, kind of like, is he doing this for the right reasons? Is he trying to, help this family get the justice that they need and figure out what happened? Or is he just trying to exploit on this tragedy? I thought it was a very interesting way of looking at it, because that is something a lot of people do talk about when it comes to cases like this. It's like, should we continue to speak on something that we don't really have much involvement in? Is it, is it worth, constantly dredging up past trauma that a family has gone through, when you can tell that, and get them involved with something and kind of like, or are you exploiting upon? I thought that entire theme, was really well done here. It's a really good message that I thought they handled well within this movie. But the movie also is very funny. There's a lot of comedy that works very well here, whether it's the family that Novak ends up approaching. There is this one recurring joke with a restaurant that they love, and I thought it was so funny what they ended up doing with it. It was easily one of my favorite parts within the entire movie. I thought it worked really well. what they ended up doing. But all of the acting here is really good. Besides BJ Novak, Boyd Holbrook is so good in this movie. He does such a great job at playing this guy who he's like very adamant on making sure that this case is solved. And you can tell like how much he cares like about his family, but he also is very much trying to be like that hero of sorts. And I thought that that was something that they did really well here. Leo Tipton is very good in this movie. Dove Cameron is fantastic here. I really liked what she ended up doing within this film. I thought this was a really strong role for her. Issa Rae was in this more than I expect her to. She's like the editor to BJ Novak, and she's kind of the one that is encouraging him, but she's also trying to kind of like question him morally on what he's doing, and I thought that was really well done. Ashton Kutcher, I have not seen him in a long time. He's very good in this movie, and I liked what he ended up doing. I did feel he was a little bit underused in this film. I think that they definitely could have done a little bit more with him in the movie, but I thought overall that he did work quite well here. My only real issues with this film that do hold it back is, like you said before, this film can be very predictable. And what I mean by that is the central mystery itself is very intriguing. It is something that you're very invested in. You want to know more of what's going on, but also because of how this affects our lead character. And as he starts to get deeper into it, you know, while you're invested in the mystery, you're also kind of wondering, should this even be your mystery to solve, considering that, you know, you're not really tied to any of what's going on. A lot of this is like this lie of sorts, and you can see he starts to go through this character arc where he starts to grow more attached to this family, but he's also getting deeper and deeper into this podcast, and I thought that was really well done. Unfortunately, the actual reveal of what's going on I found to be extremely predictable, and it's mainly because of the way that they went about it. It's just like immediately when this character pops up, you're like, that's who did it. It's obvious that's who did it. And they don't really do a great job, I think, of trying to convince you otherwise. So I just felt that it was just a very predictable reveal. I liked what ended up happening, but I felt that the reveal itself just felt very like this was obvious. They didn't really do that great of a job of presenting other options. And also the way the movie ended, I'm just not really sure if I loved. I get what they were ultimately going for. I get what they were trying to do, but I just don't know if the ending overall worked for me in the way that I ultimately wanted it to. I kind of left the movie and I was like, that's it. That's really how we're going to wrap this up. I didn't really know why this, I get what they were going for, but it's definitely one where I'm just kind of questioning, like, I think they could have added a few more minutes onto it and it would have been a little bit more satisfying, but
it's a little longer.
I really like this a lot. Like I said, I really like the social commentary that it has. I thought all the acting was really strong. It's a very overlooked movie. I feel like this is one that just not enough people are really talking about. And it's unfortunate because I think it's a very special movie that I think a lot of people should definitely watch. There aren't a lot of films out there quite like this. And BJ Novak, I think, has a real future as a director. If he wants to continue taking on projects like this, I am all here for it because I think this film has a lot of potential. I think he has a real potential as a filmmaker. But overall, like I said, I really like this one a lot, and I did give this one a B. Another one I was very excited for, Not Okay. This one was one that the second I heard that Quinn Shepard was making another movie, I was very excited for it. And it very much did not disappoint. I think right off the bat, this film does a really good job of focusing on the idea of, kind of similar ideas to the previous movie, but in a different way where it's focusing on this girl that's like, she's very popular within social media. Her entire life pretty much revolves around it, but also everyone can't stand her as a result because of just how problematic she is, but her not realizing how problematic she is. How she's constantly, saying all these things that people just don't really agree with. I think the movie does do a good job with that, but then also her trying to take this trip to, to this country, in an attempt to gain more followers. And then this tragedy ends up happening here. And this situation that she finds herself in, I thought was really well done in this movie, especially because, and they don't really touch upon this much in the trailer, there's this other girl that she ends up connecting to in Mia Isaac's character, who we just talked about in Don't Make Me Go. I thought this movie she gave a considerably better performance. She gave a good performance in Don't Make Me Go. I felt like here she just had more to work with. But she is someone that is an actual victim of this situation. And their overall bond, I thought, was very interesting because you can see for Danny's character, you know, as the movie goes on, she starts to feel more of an attachment. But at the same time, you know, you're really questioning, should you even be friends with this girl? Should you even be encouraging her to do the things? Because you didn't go through that tragedy. You've completely just, you know, you've been bullshitting pretty much everyone. And I thought that's something that they did end up handling very well within this movie, especially when you touch upon, you know, why she ultimately ended up doing it. And I felt like I said their whole back and forth worked very well. The comedy also here is just so sharp. The movie knows exactly what it's trying to poke fun at, and I thought it does a good job with that. But when it needs to get serious, it definitely does get serious. And I really liked what it was trying to say about someone who, you know, is this social media influencer of sorts. You know, is she doing more harm than good with what she's doing? Yes, she is trying to, you know, promote all these things, but is she actually practicing what she preaches? Or is she just being performative in that way? And is it actually hurting, you know, what actual victims went through? I think all of that is very relevant subject matter. And I think this film portrays it very well. Zoe Deutsch is also just fantastic in this role. Like, she did such a great job of playing this character that is inherently unlikable. And the movie makes it clear from the beginning. It literally says, like, warning this film as an unlikable protagonist. Apparently, that was something they added at the last second because I guess test audiences didn't like the fact that she was so unlikable, which, like, you don't have to have a likable character to have a good movie, but that's a whole other discussion. But yeah, she was so good as this character. She completely understood just the kind of character that Danny really is. I thought, like I said, Mia Isaac was a really big standout here. Dylan O'Brien is good for what he has. I will say my one issue with the movie is that there just isn't enough of his character. He plays a pretty crucial role in this film, and it just didn't really feel like he was given a ton to work with. He's kind of just like this guy that, Danny is attracted to, and you can see that he's kind of like rebellious in that way, but there just isn't a ton to him. And again, O'Brien is good for what he has, but he just doesn't really have a ton to do in this movie. And I wish that they would have done a little bit more with his character overall. But considering the comedy and how sharp it is, and also the ending of this film is phenomenal. I really like the way this movie ended. It felt honestly really authentic. It felt like if this situation were to happen, this is likely how it would end. And I thought they just really understood the message of what they were going for. So overall, yeah, I have a lot of love for this one. It's another one that I think a lot of people just aren't really talking about, which I can understand. A lot of people, I think, are turned off by this movie because of its like subject matter and its premise and whatnot. But I can assure you, like, I think the way they handle everything, it's done in a very like tasteful manner, and they do a really good job of like portraying the subject matter within this movie. So yeah, I really love this one a lot. B+ for Not Okay. I really wish more people were talking about this one.
Yeah, this one I didn't really know a lot about going into it, but it was very funny, very comedic, and I just loved the cast so much. And they just had this genuine and heartwarming chemistry with one another, and it was just such a great movie. But as much as I love Dylan O'Brien, he was honestly like the weakest part of this film. Just like this role just didn't really entirely suit him. It was just very different for him.
No, I think it suited him. I think he just wasn't in it enough.
In some way, but like, yeah, in that sense. But like, it just was different for him. But I mean, obviously, like, he wasn't terrible. It's just, yeah, in some aspects, it was just not the best for him. But hey, but yeah, he was also underused in that sense. But this film just had an inspiring and sweet heart, and the message was extremely important.
Yeah.
And it was just a very like the story was emotional and honest. Like, I just love that. That was just amazing. And I just really love this film, and it was definitely something special that should be talked about way more, because I echo you there. It was very overlooked. Love this movie. It was just incredible, and I gave it a B+. All right, Purple Hearts. Okay, I was actually excited going into it until like certain things came out about it.
Yeah,
It was not the best, sadly. Like
that's putting it lightly.
I didn't entirely hate it, but there's a lot wrong with it. Like I really like the ideas, just this film doesn't do a great job with them the majority of the time. I mean, Sophia Carson, love her. She was hands down the best part, but her character Cassie was just doesn't really have a huge development.
No.
Like just she doesn't have a lot really with her character, but not a bad character. She just didn't have much going with it.
Yeah.
I will say I love the songs. Those are probably my favorite part of the
Oh
movie.
yeah. Yeah, the songs are good.
Yeah, love them. And like some were emotional and they were just very touching. Nicholas Galatine, what how's it spelled?
I think it's
He spelled?
Galatzine.
Galatine, yeah. Well, he wasn't terrible with his role of Luke, but he's just kind of bland. Don't hate him or anything. Just yeah, he's just kind of like there. He was just very bland, kind of basic. I mean, they don't have a terrible chemistry, but like their characters, well, both their characters don't have the best development at all. But yeah, definitely this film gives serious Hallmark vibes. I, I mean, yeah, it's I honestly the only time I'd probably rewatch it is if like somebody wanted to watch it, so I'd be like, yeah, sure, I guess, or if it was just in the background. Didn't hate it, but it was just kind of meh. I gave it a C minus.
Well, that's great that you didn't hate it. I personally really fucking hated this one. Again, similar to other movies, this is not the kind of movie that I usually get excited for, so I already wasn't looking forward to it. And then all these articles started to come out about all this stuff that this movie allegedly promotes, even if it's not aware that it's doing it. And Sophia Carson like defending it, and I was like, I don't want anything to do with this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched it, and yeah, this film is not very well handled at all. I think it's very irresponsibly handled in quite a few areas. I will say right off the bat, I think initially Sophia Carson's character is somebody that you can get behind. She has a legitimate cause. She has a lot of beliefs that she does stand for. She needs insulin and she isn't really getting it.
Yeah.
She's going through struggles of her own. And I thought that at first I found myself relating to this character. She calls out people when they say things that she feels should not be said. And that's something that I did overall appreciate. The problem is when we get to the other side of this movie with Nicholas Galadzine's character of Luke. Luke from the beginning is every bit is like privileged and someone that is saying a lot of things that they don't really
Very
know
problematic.
about. Yeah, very problematic. Says pretty much every kind of like like racial slur or any sort of microaggression that you could think of, he's probably uttered. He has a lot of friends that also are very problematic. And the issue really comes down to the fact that the idea of these two having these different ideals and them kind of falling in love is not a bad idea. The problem is the way the movie goes about it, because as you continue watching the movie, you start to realize that Cassie starts to kind of not become as loud within these issues. She's still fighting for them, but she knows that Luke doesn't necessarily agree with that. And because of that, she just kind of like, shuts up and lets him continue to feel the way that he does. Meanwhile, Luke makes no real effort to change his ideals or change the way he thinks about things, even though his logic is legitimately harmful to her. The things that he believes in are harmful to what she believes in and are hurting her cause in that way. So like, and I saw somebody say this on Letterboxd, this very much feels like it's that movie about like this woman that she wants to prove she has all these like, liberal ideals. She stands for all these like really good things, but she's married or with this man that is just so inherently problematic and that believes in these things, and yet she's like supporting him throughout the entire thing. And that's kind of the direction that this movie goes into. It doesn't try to put in this message of, you know, try to change your ideals or try to become a better person throughout it. Luke doesn't become a better person throughout this. We don't, obviously, yeah, we don't see him using his hateful rhetoric as the movie goes on, but there's never a point where he's kind of reflecting on anything. So it just really pissed me off the way that they went about it. And as such, I didn't find this romantic in the slightest. I found it very forced. I found it very, like, on the nose in that way. The messages that this movie is trying to dive into, they don't handle these topics very well. It feels like they're just kind of here to give this movie a little bit more meat, so you can say it's more than just a generic you know, romantic drama. But I think in doing so, they added a lot more like problematic logic to this movie that just didn't really work at all. I really don't like what this movie stands for. The message itself, I think, is just really poorly handled. And again, I don't think intentionally this is what they were trying to do. I do want to say that. I don't think that's intentionally what they were trying to do. I think they set out to make a movie and they had something in mind, but they went about it just completely the wrong way. And I don't think they handled it very well at all. I will agree with you that I think the performance, the music, the songs that Cassie sings are really good in this movie. The only thing that really saves this movie for me is Sofia Carson's performance. I've always been a fan of her. I've always thought that she's a really great actress, and she does give a really strong performance here. But I just cannot get behind a lot of what this movie is standing for. I think a lot of it, honestly, is just really, really gross to think about, and I don't really want to think about it for too long. I know that there are people out there that are defending this movie, and I just can't. I just can't. I think a lot of this film is just very, very, very gross. It's not very well handled at all. Again, I don't think that it was necessarily like intent. Like, I don't think the intention was to go about it this way, but I think the execution very much is promoting this very negative behavior that I just don't really like very much at all. So yeah, I really just couldn't stand this one. It's also way too long. There's like no reason for this movie to be 2 hours. There's another character.
They could have made it like an hour 40.
They could have easily, yeah. Like, there was no reason for it to be as long as it was. It really starts to drag, I think, in the back half, especially as the film goes on and they start to get deeper into this not arranged marriage, but this marriage that is like starts off as like this agreement of sorts, and then of course blossoms into something real. I just really couldn't say this one at all. D+ for Purple Hearts. Honestly, out of the movies that we are talking about, this is probably the one that I liked the least. I really don't like this one at all. Please do not make this a franchise, Netflix. I am begging you. There are a lot of really mediocre films out there that you've made into a franchise. Please do not make this one, because I don't need to see more of these two characters anytime soon. So this last one we're talking about here, Honor Society, I honestly was really surprised by this one. The way the movie was promoted, you know, you think it's like this romantic comedy of sorts, and it's really kind of not. A lot of this film is about this girl who is this overachiever. She's like very focused on her studies. She's really trying to do what she can to like get into college. A lot of people have compared her to Tracy Flick in that sense, and I feel like that is a very good comparison, because again, she's someone that's like solely dedicated to that stuff. She doesn't really care about other stuff that's going on within her life. And Angry Rice is just so good in this role. You really find yourself latching on to this character, even if she isn't always the most likable at times. I think she does a really good job in just really kind of grounding this character, not making her feel as over the top as she really can. It's very reminiscent of, I think, Reese Witherspoon's work in Election. That's why that role works so well, because of how good Reese Witherspoon portrayed the character. I think the same goes for Angry Rice here. I really liked what she ended up doing in this movie. And Gabe Matazzaro is also very good here. I think the two of them do have a really strong chemistry, and I really liked what they ultimately ended up doing them. And then Christopher Mintz-Plasse as well has a very hard role to pull off. He plays this teacher who is really kind of gross, because he's always trying to make these like he's always trying to get closer with Angry Rice, and they played that character off, I think, in a very like distasteful manner. But the way that he handled it, I thought was really well done. There are points where you are laughing at him, but you're not laughing because of how predatory he is to Angry Rice. You're laughing at him because of how much of a fucking pathetic loser this guy is.
Yeah,
and I thought that he ended up playing that very well. So I liked what he ended up doing in this movie. There's some nice little subplots as well involving her friends, which I thought was really well done. What really, I think, made this movie for me, though, is the direction they ended up going with it. Because you think at a certain point, you know where this is going to go. You think you have an idea of how this film's going to wrap up. And then they throw this twist out there. And I actually really liked it a lot. I thought it made the film feel a little bit more fresh, a little bit more original. And it kind of added this other new layer to the film that I honestly wasn't expecting. And I really liked what they ended up doing in that, because I think it made the film that much better as a result. I thought the comedy here worked really well. I really liked a lot of the I thought the script overall was really well done. What they end up doing, there's this other character that the character of Honor seems to like, and the direction they end up going with that character, I thought was really well done. Her group of friends, you actually do find yourself kind of investing in a good majority of them. I think the only thing that brings this down for me is I do think there are those typical like high school cliches that I don't think work quite as well as they could have. Some of her friends, there's not really as much to them. There are points in this movie where I did feel it dragging just a bit, but overall I like this one a lot more than I thought I would. Honestly, I've been saying it forever, but like I think Paramount Plus is really struggling when it comes to original movies. This is really the first one where I can say I liked this. I actually really liked the way this turned out, and honestly turned out to be a much better movie than I was expecting. So yeah, B for Honor Society. Another one that I just don't think is getting talked about enough.
Yeah, I was like really excited for this one ever since I saw the trailer. And it was definitely like, yeah, it was definitely one I was very much looking forward to, and it was just a very comedic and wholesome storyline, and like the performances from how do you say it?
Angry Rice.
Angry Rice and Gaten Matarazzo, like they were just incredible in this film, and like I love seeing him in other roles than just Stranger Things. Like hopefully he gets more roles. He's great.
Yeah.
And it was just like a very sweet and pure heart in this movie. And like the message was important, very heartfelt. Like honestly, I was smiling and laughing the majority of the time watching. And it was just, oh yeah, we watched it in person, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Yeah, we did.
It was the day before I left.
I know.
I know.
Wait, was it the day before we left?
It was, yeah.
No, I think it was it was a little after we got there.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, I don't remember. Oh wait, never mind. No, never mind. Said on my letterbox says watched on August 2nd. Never mind.
Yes, that was the day before we left.
Okay. But yeah, really my only issue is just that some characters were a little underused in some aspects. They just didn't have a huge story. But like honestly, this film is just truly something special, and it was just a real treat. And I agree, it's like very overlooked. It should be talked about way more. It was just like this one of the very sweet, wholesome films of the summer, and I just really enjoyed it. And also, I gave it a B.
All right. And with that, those are all of the movies that we are talking about for this month. This was a lot of fun to do. I'm excited to maybe do this again at some point. It was fun to get to do this with you. But before we do wrap this up, you want to like plug your socials and things like that, even though I think people know where to find you at this point?
Obviously follow me on Twitter, AlyCatXO. That's also my letterbox. Also my serialized is also AlyCatXO. I haven't really done any reviews on there. I just kind of like rate things and like things, stuff like that. But
everyone should get a serialized. If you like Letterboxd and you're like, where's a TV letterbox? Well, now you have it. It's called serialized. So get it when you get it.
Yeah, it's great. And then obviously if you want my Instagram is Aly Kssan 13. Aly Jacqueline on Facebook, and then if you want my Snapchat or anything, just hit me up. And also stay tuned for more Conversation with Kelly. We've been kind of too busy for that lately, but we're going to be catching up on Claim to Fame and do the podcast for that soon. Probably like on Monday or so.
By the time this is up, we probably will already be caught up, but
Yeah, right. But we're also going to be doing some other things, like just some season reviews of the shows, and I'm excited for that. And of course, we're going to do Survivor this season.
Yes.
And we're going to be just, yeah, we're probably just going to do a lot of season reviews for certain shows. But I'm very excited, and thank you very much for having me.
Yes, always. This was a lot of fun. I hope moving forward that I can be more consistent with these What I Watch videos and you're not watching the What I Watched in August and December, but we will have to see how that does turn out. But no, in all seriousness, this was a lot of fun. Always enjoy getting to these videos. As always, guys, comment down below. Let us know what you guys thought of any of these movies. Would love to hear your thoughts on all of them. That's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.
Have a good night.